Hello, good friends, and welcome to another episode of the 10,000 Lamps podcast. I'm Kyle Radke. I'm here with Julian Andrews. Julian, are you happier than a Bucks fan right now?
Yes, because I'm going for the Suns in this series. So, yes, I am happier.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. We have Jewel Graham from Gimme a Buck podcast coming on later in the pod. And he's going to kind of talk about where the Bucks are at. Obviously, they're down 2-0, so life's not good. Kind of where Giannis is at, and then like what the future might hold if you lose the series, 4-1, or God forbid you get swept. So that'll be a good conversation later in the podcast. For us, we're going to go through the upcoming free agents for the Timberwolves as promised. There's only 3, and like Gerson Rosas, like, man, again, like, I love the pre-draft banter where we hang on to every word that every GM says. But if you actually
hold on. Let me guess. Because I didn't see. Did he say something along the lines of, "Well, we're going to be really active, and we're always going to look for opportunities to improve the team, probably through trades is our most likely avenue right now."
That's exactly what he said.
That's what every GM says every year, because this is the time when you make trades.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
You're like, we're not going to do nothing. Okay, great.
And we're going to be very active, even though we're limited, and we're going to look for all options, and nothing's
off the table.
Yeah, you're like, but then everybody falls for it. Everybody's like, oh, Wolves fans are talking, or the Wolves are talking about trades.
The Wolves are getting LeBron.
It's like, well, that's what he says, and like not just him, but that's what every GM says. Yeah. So interesting. The Timberwolves don't have much cap room. We can go through like later, like where they're at and everything. I'm not sure which of the like exceptions they have, whether it's the non-taxpayer mid-level, which like gives them about 9.2, or the biannual. But I mean, either way, you're not getting like probably a very good player in free agency if you're getting them. But they do have 3 players that are probably on their way out. Let's go through each one. The first is my favorite, and that's Jordan McLaughlin. He's got a qualifying offer that he could take for $1.4 million. I really doubt he would. And then the year after that, he becomes a restricted free agent. It's not to say that $1.4 million is not a lot. It's just saying that in a backcourt that already has Rubio, Russell, Edwards, Beasley, and then if Balmero can handle the ball too, it's like there's just so many guys that have that can run the offense through, and the fact that Jordan McLaughlin, like, he was my guy in 2019-20, 8 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, 1 steal per game. His stats actually not that unsimilar in the previous year, or in this season. 5 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, 1 steal. In his rookie year, he shot 49% from the field and 38% from the 3-point line. Last year, 41% from the field and 36% from the 3-point line. I mean, I just really think that, and we touched on this when we closed last podcast, and I'm not sure what the deal looks like for him, but like a 3-year, like $6 million, or 3-year, $9 million.
I was going to say 3-9 makes a lot of sense.
For a team needing a backup point guard that's going to play 15 minutes a game, and maybe they already have a backup point guard and they want to bring in somebody else like
Magic.
The more that I watch someone like Cam Payne, the way he can wiggle around and just get to his spots, that seems like something Jordan McLaughlin can do. And like, let's remember, like, Cam Payne was completely lost in the league for the last 5 years. Nobody knew, like, he was a former first-round pick, but like, he was cut by the Raptors. He was cut by the Bulls. Like, I think he was playing overseas. And McLaughlin's rise to where he is now is somewhat unusual. He played at USC, undrafted, played for the Nets, and their G League team. And then Pablo Prigioni comes over, says, "Hey, Gerson, this is a good guy." And actually, from the conversations I had with Scott Layden's actually was super interested in bringing McLaughlin over before the Rosas regime started. And then McLaughlin comes over, and he lights it up at Summer League in Vegas, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, what is this 5'9" guy doing? And all of a sudden you're like, wait, this guy's really, really good, but is he good because of Summer League? Is he good because he's good? And then he starts the G League season and he's really good for the Iowa Wolves. And then he gets brought up to the Timberwolves and it's a nightmare right away. He is falling all over the place. You can tell he's just totally undersized. He doesn't really quite know how to fit in. And then if I remember right, he ended up getting sent back down to the G League, and then he comes back up again, after like an array of injuries to the Timberwolves, and he absolutely crushes it. I think there was like a 13 or 14 game stretch right before the end of the season. Let me see if I can find that here. But where you were like, wait, like, like what's going on here?
Yeah.
Let's look.
I mean, he's definitely capable, right? Like that's never been the question. It's just kind of like, where's the opportunity? And I think you're right. It's probably not with the Timberwolves.
And that's where if I were him, I'd be like, well, no thanks, but no thanks. Because he did kind of already get screwed this year by like the 2A restrictions. A 13 game stretch in 2019-20 where he averaged 11 points, 6 assists, 2 rebounds, 2 steals, and shot 56% from the field and 44% from the 3-point line. And for a guy playing like backup minutes, granted, I think those minutes were 22 per game. So if you think he's probably playing 4 or 5 less minutes per game, but I really like him, and I hope he doesn't go to a team like Orlando because like there's an opportunity. My hope is that there's a team that like is kind of like the Suns, where there's an opportunity for a good team. And like unless Rubio gets traded somehow and it opens up a spot behind Russell, I just don't think it's in Minnesota.
Where it'd be kind of good?
Tell me.
The Bucks.
Oh my gosh, yeah, right? Like the Bucks. I mean, another team that comes. I mean, like I think of like that Jalen Brunson fit in Dallas, and that would kind of be perfect. So hopefully he ends up somewhere decent. I'm almost rooting for him not to be back with the Wolves, even though I am a huge fan. All right, next guy, Ed Davis. You may remember the Timberwolves got Ed Davis for a 2nd round pick last year. I think everybody was like, again, it's like the free agent parade. We kind of throw every player, and they're like, oh my gosh, Damian Lillard loves Ed Davis and says he's the best teammate ever. And there is something to be said about having good teammates. I do think that's true. I would be a good teammate if you'd let me.
I was surprised that Ed Davis wasn't a little better though, or that he didn't play more. Like, did he even ever play?
He only played 23 games. 23 games, 2 points, 5 rebounds. So yeah, I mean, it was. I don't want to call it like it's not a failure because you only traded a 2nd round pick for him, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine he'll be back. The thing is, the Wolves need the Wolves need some depth at the 4 and 5,
right?
Which I would think would be a priority in the offseason. And maybe you bring back Davis because maybe he was well liked in the offseason. But if you're Davis, maybe you say, wait, these things were all true last year.
Yeah, and he's not re-signing.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I don't know. I was surprised that he didn't get a little bit more run, considering how much the Wolves needed bigs. I don't know if it was just like. I never could. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. We never could tell the entire season if the Wolves were trying to win or if they were prioritizing development. And I'm not saying that like playing Ed Davis, all of a sudden you're like a 50-win team or something. But I don't know. There is like, okay, maybe you're just going to stick to playing your young guys.
Well, Don, and you're right though. That brings us to like our next guy too. And we'll get into him shortly. But I mean, I guess I get the Ed Davis thing where like when like you have Naz Reid, who you want to get a bunch of minutes to. Yeah. Like you gave this contract to Juancho Hernan-Gomez, who actually just dislocated his shoulder. It sounds like he's out for the Olympics. Yeah. So yeah, and then it brings us to Jared Vanderbilt. Now, Jared Vanderbilt is an interesting story as well. He is like wildly hailed out of high school, like the 13th guy in his class, and he ends up going to Kentucky, where I don't think he gets much run there. Like it's not like the Kentucky story of like the Devin Booker and the Karl Anthony Towns. And he ends up falling to the second round, where like he's a guy that probably if he comes right out of high school, he's probably like a mid first round pick. Obviously, he couldn't do that. So he falls and he ends up going to the Orlando Magic, who he gets traded then to the Denver Nuggets. And I mean, he's essentially just a throw-in trade in the Malik Beasley deal, because in the first 2 seasons in Denver, he plays 26 games. And then in his first season in Minnesota, which which was such a goofy end of the season, he ends up playing 2 games. So everybody's kind of like, well, who is Jared Vanderbilt? And I think you're probably leaning towards he feels more like Amari Spellman, Jacob Evans to the Wolves than he does a player that can actually play. But then, and this is where I like Jared Vanderbilt a lot. And if he did come back, given the Wolves' depth, I wouldn't be like totally upset depending on what the deal is for.
No,
because what Jared Vanderbilt does so well is he tries. And like, yep, it's going to result in him missing wide open layups. Like it's kind of like the Josh Okogie syndrome, where he tries so hard.
He's like hustling so much that sometimes he's just spiking the ball off the back of the rim.
Like I feel like it was 45 times this year I watched Vanderbilt steal a ball at half court and like just pick a pass, but then he'd come down and like miss the layup or dunk.
Yep.
And I can say that officially we're going to retire the nickname V8, which shouldn't have ever been a thing. Sorry, Jim Peterson and Dave Benz, but that was not a great nickname. You guys give a lot of good ones. That was not so good. But yeah, Jared Vanderbilt last year, he ends up playing 64 games. He averages 5 points, 6 rebounds, in 2 assists, 1 block in 64 games, 18 minutes per game. No 3-point shot really to even consider with him, which it is what it is. But for a guy, I mean, like if he's your backup power forward, with just natural progression, he's going to be 22 years old. I don't mind that. I think that's fine. So it is what it is. He has the qualifying offer and he's a restricted free agent. So the Wolves it's kind of up to them. If another team comes in and says, we're going to offer him X money, the Wolves probably don't match. But if it's the Wolves giving either a qualifying offer or they're able to lowball him and promise him a role, you could.
I don't think he's getting much attention.
No, and you and I have talked about this too. It's also one of those things where you probably overrate some of your own guys, because if you're like, oh man, but Jordan McLaughlin could be a backup point guard somewhere, and Jared Vanderbilt could be a rotational big man, and it's like, okay, but then the rest of the guys are Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, and Malik Beasley, all guys that we like. Mm-hmm. So why isn't this team just better? And then you're like, oh wait, because maybe those guys aren't very good collectively. Yeah. Like maybe it's just because maybe Jared Vanderbilt played 17 minutes a game and averaged those stats because literally there's nobody else that could.
Right.
So that's always like the argument.
This always happens on bad teams, right? It's like there's some guys that kind of stand out in losses, and then you have to watch out for the trap of being like, oh, those guys are really good. Yeah. Because you're right. They weren't. I mean, if Jared Vanderbilt was like great, the Wolves would have won more games.
Yeah, and for these guys collectively.
I'm not saying it's Jared Vanderbilt's fault that the Wolves were bad, but there is that trap. You're totally right.
So I mean, the good news for the Wolves in free agency, they're not losing a big name. If all 3 of these guys walk, the team will survive, and it'll kind of be business as usual. But just interesting guys to watch. I can't imagine any of them will be on like Woj's radar. You're probably not going to see him in a Woj bomb, but
you might. I mean, I don't know if it'll be a bomb.
It'll be like a very subtle.
Woj has a deep bench of contacts. I'm sure he knows their agents.
That's true. So not much of a free agent series, but just the 3 guys to watch. If I had to rank in order of most likely to be gone, I'd probably say number 1, Davis, 2 McLaughlin, and then 3 Vanderbilt. You could see him staying, right. And maybe you see McLaughlin staying. Depending on what they can get done in restricted free agency. So
yeah,
we'll see. Julian, have you done any free fantasy pools?
I've not.
I'm telling you, I won another one the other day. I won like 30 cents on DraftKings, and they're free. And they make you feel kind of smart because you can see how well you do compared to other people. So I would go do them.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out.
After I pumped them up on here, one of your buddies, Andrew, texted me and told me that his plan was to get rich off DraftKings pools. It hasn't worked yet.
Okay, well, I haven't heard from him today, so he could have won. He could have been a millionaire.
Yeah,
starting this morning. After he logged in, checked his DraftKings free pools.
I will say ballsy move trying to get rich off something that it's free, but also probably the best way to get rich if you can do it.
Right. No startup money.
Yeah, it's true.
I want to talk about that question you texted me last night.
Okay. Yeah. Let me do our quick DraftKings plug.
Oh yeah. Plug away.
We love DraftKings. Thank you for sponsoring us. The deal. This weekend it's McGregor. It's Poirier. I'm not a huge UFC fighting guy. A lot of people are. And you know what? Chances are if one of my buddies texts me and wants to watch it, I'll just order it because that's kind of the person I am. And then we'll realize, wait, the fight's not on until 11 p.m. and not 8 p.m. like it says because there's a million other fights before it. And I don't really know how fights work. Yeah, that's how it works. But you can create a lineup that night on DraftKings, which is kind of fun. And if you do order it, you can kind of watch and follow along with your guys. Maybe you create multiple lineups. Maybe you hedge all your bets. I don't know what you do. It's up to you. It's super easy. Use the code TBPN. It helps us. Obviously, I hope it helps DraftKings. I hope people are using the code. We think they're great. So, TBPN when you sign up. Julian, the question I texted you last night was, sorry, I didn't know if that was like a nice segment.
I can tee it up.
Yeah, tee it up.
So Kyle texted me. He said, well, I think the wording of your text was a little confusing, but if you're doing a fantasy draft with the Wolves in the NBA Finals, when is Cat picked? Is what you said. But I think what you mean is if we're drafting doing a fantasy draft from the Bucks, the Suns, and the Timberwolves, where does Cat go? And then you said it would go 1 Giannis, 2 Chris Paul, 3 Booker, 4 Towns.
Yeah, I think you could argue. I mean,
I think that's right.
I think you could probably put Ayton in there at 4 if you wanted to. And then
that was my question. Is if you're the Suns and you had an opportunity to switch out Ayton for Cat right now, do you do it?
No,
because I don't either. And I this might just be horribly underrating Cat, but at the same time, there's what Ayton does really fits. Ayton's better defender than Cat. He doesn't need as many touches, and he's maybe a better rim roller.
Maybe we're a prisoner of the moment, but I also think that there's something to be said. And I read a really good article about the Hawks and how they built their team, and they weren't necessarily going for all the best players. They were going for players that were complementary to each other. So yes, if the trade is we want Ayton for Towns and you're playing 2K, right? Mm-hmm. The ratings would favor Towns. You'd be Towns can do all these things that Ayton can't do. But the thing is, Ayton does all the shit that Towns doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
And so you're exactly right.
Did you watch the game last night? I
did, yeah.
When Monty Williams was talking to Ayton.
Yeah.
Did you see that? That was very cool. And then Ayton really came in and turned it around. That was a nice little window into some coaching. I feel like Ayton kind of stepping it up is really what kind of secured that game for the Suns last night.
Yeah, I think the world of him now.
Yeah, me too.
All 3 of those guys, because it went from you can only be on Team Luka, you can only be on Team Ayton, you can only be on Team Young, and now it's you know what? I think all 3 teams won.
Yeah,
especially if Cam Reddish starts to you can't tell me the Mavericks would rather have Trae Young and Cam Reddish. And you can't tell me the Hawks would rather have Luka. And then you look at the Suns and you can't tell me they'd want anybody but Ayton on that team.
Yeah, I don't think the Suns would be in the finals if Luka was on that team instead of Ayton.
No, probably not.
Which sounds crazy to say, but there's something to be said for like team construction. So if you're starting a team from scratch, you would rather have Cat than you would Ayton.
Yes.
You know, but if you are the Suns and you have what the Suns have, I don't think you want Cat.
Well, I was listening to.
I don't think the Wolves would want Ayton for Cat either. So this is a.
No, it's true, but I mean, like that's going to be the talk though this summer. Is I think there's been like some center rankings on Twitter from writers, and I saw Bill Simmons put out like his top 20 players right now.
Oh, great.
We all care. But I listen still. But like all, you know, basically some of these rankings on Twitter's on Twitter's, what am I, 95 years old? Were basically, you know, Jokic, Embiid, Gobert, Bam, Ayton, and everybody's like, where the fuck is Towns? And it's like, well, sorry, those guys have all won. And I'm not saying that I would take Bam over Towns, like skill level, but you know, I had a conversation last night when I was watching the game with a buddy, and I was just saying how Towns didn't do himself any favors in that Rocket series because he looked like absolute balls. Like he was so trash.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, like I get, and it's not coming from like his camp, but all the people that are like, man, we just underrate Cat. And it's like, yeah, but like in his first playoffs ever, DeAndre Ayton is like the most efficient human that's ever played the game.
Yeah.
And you could make the argument, well, yeah, if Carl had Chris Paul, he would be good too. But sure, but like that didn't happen. And he got absolutely owned by Clint Capella. So like until Carl proves that he can play big minutes in the NBA Finals, I'm sorry, to me, he's like in that total like DeMarcus Cousins category of like,
wow, fun
stats. Because I mean, if you look at Cousins' stats early in his career, it's like those were his numbers. You go, yep, fun stats, can't win. Like talk to me when he does, because otherwise, like I'm going to rate all these guys higher because they're playing meaningful games.
Yeah, I get it. I completely understand that argument. I think that Cat's skill level is still higher than several of those guys, and I think he's better than DeMarcus Cousins was. But I get it. I mean, I like it. That's the thing. There isn't really a good argument against what you're saying, because it's true. Cat has not been able to get his team to win, and you can look at all of the other kind of guys around him, but look who Jokic has around him. You know, like Aaron Gordon is probably the second best player on that team right now. With Jamal Murray hurt, they still made the second round of the playoffs. I know. You know, at some point the excuses stop. And I don't have to convince you of this, but it's like kind of aging Jimmy Butler, you know, should not be a better supporting cast than supposedly what the Wolves are trying to do. And if Cat was really that much better than Bam, I don't know. There's obviously a lot more than just like, there's like team culture and coaching and all of this stuff that is working against Cat. But if you think you're able to be the best player on a championship team, even on a playoff team, the team's gotta be better. So there's at some point it just doesn't really matter what the excuse is. So I'm with you. It's tough.
Isn't there something to be said though that these teams that where like somebody like Bam shines and somebody like Ayton shines, where their culture, you know, maybe wasn't great before, but then it had to take a Jimmy Butler to come in and change it, and it had to take a Chris Paul to change it. And I don't necessarily think that's like a huge knock on Carl, because I think it's harder to fix something when you're inside of it than, you know, when you're coming in. But I do think there's something like there probably is some blame internally for like why the culture is like that. And I'm not saying that is like all on Towns' shoulders. It's been for the last 30 years.
I mean, I think Jimmy fucked up the culture with the Wolves. I know that like he was a good fit with the Heat, but like I don't know. I don't think Jimmy was like helpful to the Wolves culture. I don't think Jimmy helped Cat.
No,
the same way that he's like helping Bam.
No, I think you're right. No, because I mean, he did blow it up, right? Like he completely sabotaged that whole situation.
Yes.
But also, I think if Carl and Andrew would have had attitudes similar to Bam and Ayton, where instead of being I think they were very combative of, nope, this is actually how I play. Thanks. Like I'm good. I've been a like number one recruit my whole life. No, thank you, Jimmy Butler. And I think that was how the relationship started. And then it got so rocky where Jimmy is, while I think he is a very good player and he can turn bad teams into good ones, he is a very immature person. And I think that he did all these weird things that he thought was being a leader. And then Towns and Wiggins are also like, I won't call them as much immature as I will just young people, and then I think they were sensitive and some of that stuff didn't hit them right. And then the relationship is ruined. Right. So yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, I could go either way. I mean, you're going to see a lot of those center rankings though, going into next year. And then it'll be the first month of next year and Towns will light it up and we'll all be like, see, this is how good Towns is. But then
what's going to happen? The Wolves are going to win 4 games. The Wolves might win like their first 4 games. And then the Wolves social media is going to do that thing where they do like uppercase, lowercase, uppercase, lowercase. You know, like with like the headers, that's like
who's
Towns
a bad team?
Like Towns is the 10th best center in the league. And then in March, another team will quote tweet that when the Wolves are 17 and 40 or whatever.
When Ayton puts up like a 30-30 on Towns.
Yeah.
That'd be great. All right. Well, we have our interview here with Jewel Graham. For those on YouTube, you won't be able to see it. Go head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, and you can listen to that interview. Yeah, we just talk about where the Bucks are, what's up next, what happens if they lose, and how they win, maybe how they win from being down 2-0. So we're excited for that. But Julian, you have a super duper weekend.
Me too.
Thanks to our good friends at 3 Star Sports Cards. Obviously, if you need cards, go see them. We're only supposed to give them one shutter a week, but we just like them so much.
I think we might be opening some more cards at some point in the future.
We are. Yeah, maybe Sunday.
Yeah.
Maybe on Sunday we'll do a live. But yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next week.